Welcome to Unfiltered with Love. I'm your host, Carrie Love. We're here today with Teresa Blackburn, and she has written a book called Strip Down, and she is a licensed therapist. And I met Teresa when I was learning Reiki. She actually is the person who taught me Reiki. So I asked her to come on to the show today and talk a little bit about her book, as well as I wanted to dive deep a little bit into sexual intimacy, casual relationships versus possible soul connection and sacred sexual intimacy. So, Teresa, can you just give us a little bit of a background on your therapy and your book?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a licensed therapist. I also teach Reiki. I do emotion code, body code as well, which is a subconscious energy technique that can be very helpful for multiple things, but I especially use it for people who have a lot of trauma. So I use those types of therapies every day online. They don't have to be in person, they can be done via the quantum field, but also can be done in person. So I kind of have like a little blend going on. I did write a book, and that book is called Strip Down. And I started writing that book in 2020. I just started writing down my experiences because I spent 7 years as an exotic dancer, and that led into my finishing my master's degree in counseling. So I've had a lot of experiences on like the other side of the coin, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that dark, lower vibrational kind of a lot of toxicity, that world as far as the sex industry goes. So I've seen a lot in the sex industry in all the ins and outs. And if you want to know anything about that, we could talk about some of that. But, I did write about that and how I just was kind of forced into changing my life. I didn't want to continue doing that lifestyle. I had quit. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I was trying to deal with a specific phobia. And a therapist that I was seeing said, try this thing called emotion code, gave me a phone number of a guy. I tried it. It helped. And I was like, well, this is the first thing that's helped in like 20 years. So I put an effort towards doing more sessions. And then one thing led to another in my life. Call it divine timing, divine intervention, whatever. But I was doing emotion code, healing some of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, the antidepressant that I was on for 14 years stopped working for my body. I'm in full withdrawal. I have to get off the antidepressant. And then all of a sudden, tragedy strikes in my life. My mom's getting diagnosed with cancer, all while I had first discovered Reiki. And so it was almost like I'm ushered into this other's world as a supportive mechanism to get me through the intense things that were happening with the old life crumbling. That's kind of, the meat of the book in the middle is kind of like I stripped myself of clothes, but then I stripped myself of like all the old things and all of the other old ways. Not completely to where I'm like some kind of a prude and I'm like, I'm this like holier than thou person. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it just I had to do a clearing and we could talk all about that. Physical, emotional, whatever. And then to your point and what you want to talk about today is that sexual energy and how
Mm-hmm.
it can affect you, your body, your mind, your energy field. So
Yeah. And one of the things that I have brought up to you several times is what really hit me is on social media one time when you posted the picture of the girl with the guy, and he was, leaning down, they're about to have sex, and you look in the mirror and he's a demon. And
yeah.
I thought that really was something that stuck with me. And when I started really thinking about how, sexual relationships are sometimes, obviously more than just casual relationships. I mean, you're really sharing bits and pieces of your soul and parts of you sometimes. So I know that you have, your views on that as well, because you've been in both, probably both camps there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that right. I mean, it's just that energy can be intertwined with yours, and you're really picking up a lot of what the other person has going on when you're physically connecting with them in that way. And we could talk about like levels of that and intensity and the differences between men and women and,
Mhm.
how all of that, whatever you're interested in today, we'll just roll with
Sure.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
what, we talked before and we had talked about casual sex before, and you were telling me, like, some people, it can work for them if depending on their energy and what, what they are, what they're into. So maybe you could talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think that, gosh, it's like, where do you start with that? I mean, I feel like if some people, consenting adults, decide to engage in some kind of casual sex and they have like protected their energy and they know how to clear their energy afterwards, they have a good chance of like doing it without a lot of repercussions. But most people are completely unconscious and unaware of this kind of stuff. But I think once you become aware that these energy exchanges can happen, then you can decide what's best for you.
Yeah. And I've actually read some things online as well, some people talking about how people have different traumas, and after having a relationship with them that they kind of take on some of those issues, some of those traumas that the other person has. So
Yeah.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think if you're unaware and you're just, you're a teen or you're in your 20s and you're having a good time, right? That's what we do. We learn, we figure things out. They're unknowingly taking part in that other person's energy space. So,
Mhm.
they they have an accumulation of different people going on, and people's energies happening for
Sure.
sure.
Now, a couple things I was thinking about. Do you think that modern culture encourages casual intimacy more than meaningful connection?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it didn't, and then it did in the late
Mhm.
90s and all through the 2000s, early 2000s, and into the like the 2010s. But
Mhm.
now I think it's changing a little bit more. I think it's cool now to be celibate. People are more mindful because it's trending.
Mhm. I think that
Yes.
too, but in a way, and I've also noticed a little bit of a reverse roles with boys and girls, or the younger guys and girls, because when I was younger, I felt like the men were more promiscuous and things like that. And now I feel like I've met more younger people who the men are celibate and the
Mm.
women are the ones that are kind of
Hmm.
seem more promiscuous. So I think it's kind of like exchange, change of roles there a little bit.
Yeah.
'Cause I have 2 boys. I have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old, so I kinda see from their angles and their friends and things like that, and it's, I've been, even just talking with them, it's been a learning experience for me, to
Hmm.
say the least, because it's just something I've not had to, deal with in my younger days, so
Yeah. 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 What do you think contributes to that shift that you're noticing?
Well, honestly, I think that it's probably just, the women kind of now taking a more lead role just in a lot of things in general. They've kinda just said, like, I feel like it's like we're women, so we're gonna we can do what we want, and so maybe traditionally it was the men who were more aggressive in that area, but as I think women have come and now they're doing career and they're doing all these things that were traditionally maybe thought of as more male roles. They've
Hmm.
kind of now maybe come into that role as well sexually. I don't know. That's just my theory, just because I think of it, but I don't know if that's true or not. You know, the,
Yeah.
the whole like just, sexual revolution, women's lib type stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's part of it, but also, too, the men have become less driven in certain ways and, more likely to just be like, well, I'm not in a position of leadership anymore.
Mhm.
So then women kind of take on that role. I think that, they have to take on that role sometimes
Sure.
as a mom, as a the main breadwinner. I mean, as a therapist now,
Mhm.
I have women and couples in therapy where the women make more. They work more. The
Mhm.
dad stays at home because he's in the arts and crafts or writing or
Yeah.
whatever the case. I mean, and it's like, well, yeah, this isn't really biologically healthy. It's not how
Mhm.
it was supposed to be when you're trying to be heterosexual and have a family. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure.
But
Not the
but
traditional
it's
family
like,
roles, yes.
yeah, but also too, there's traditional family roles, people were like tired of it. They're like,
Mhm.
okay, this is cheesy and boring now. So, yeah, but I think the sexual piece is that they're kind of doing that male role, like, okay, I'll get what I want and move on with my day.
Mhm.
And there's no more room for like true vulnerability or true open heart space.
It's true. I
Yeah.
think that's a rarity,
Hmm.
definitely. And do you think that we are becoming more disconnected emotionally?
I don't know. I mean, I think more people dissociate now than ever, but
I
there's
think so
there's
too.
so many tools to do it with now. From games to scrolling to
Mhm.
for the regular old food and drug type of things too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my last episode that I had was called "Are We Afraid to Love?" Because
Mm,
I feel like that has become, just from what I see, like I said, with online and my kids and things like that, and it just seems like it's people are they don't really even know what healthy relationships look like, or what,
hmm.
um, it's and then they're afraid. And even my son will say have said that he's afraid of, you know, he doesn't want the expectations involved if he feels like he's in a commitment and, different things like that. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what it's kind of scary, really.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like every human being is going to learn and grow through sexual experiences. So you can't like say that, oh well, I've had the secret experience from the beginning and that's how I'm going to stay forever. Some people maybe,
Mhm.
and that's okay, but a majority of people learn and grow through their experiences.
Sure.
So I feel that what I learned ages ago was that women can hold a man's or a partner's sexual energy for 7 years, and a man holds a woman's sexual energy for 7 days. And I thought that was pretty unfair.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I wonder how true that is. So I remember, sex was so casual for me back in those days. It was being sold everywhere around me. The idea of sex, sexual content. There was no OnlyFans, there was no Chatterbait back then, there was no Pornhub. It was just you had to go in person, right? So
Mhm.
there were a lot of people that did escort services and such back then. And so sex was like nothing. It was an exchange, it was
Mhm.
transactional, it was just like not a big deal. And so all those years, I had really unconsciously unaware that anything was wrong. So after I had a life change, I started to realize that my body was affected, my energy field was affected by those things. And I would remember this specific time I was getting worked on by this woman who was she was like a medical medium and she did
Mhm.
all her own type of energy work, but you were still lying on a table, similar to Reiki. So she was doing all this work and she was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just pulling souls, like people out of your sacral chakra. It's like they're all stuck in there. And I'm like,
Ugh.
yeah, no shit. I'm like, don't even know, how many things that I've done or whatever. So she was doing that and I remember just like all those energies, I just wanted them to clear out of me. I wanted to be
Mhm.
disconnected from other people's energy. And so what ends up happening is people with trauma, they claim to be an empath, right? And they're like, oh, I'm so empathic. I can't be around this person. I can't touch this person. I can't do this. Basically, you're not gifted with empathy. You are in a trauma response, and your nervous system is so heightened, and you become so hyper vigilant and sensitive and aware that you're now actually like plagued by this extreme empathy, right? You're not
Mhm.
an extreme empath, you're traumatized, and you need to balance that out. So when people are in that state and they're connecting with people sexually, they're more open to take that on. People will feed on that energy vampires, narcissists.
Mhm.
You naturally attract in what you have experienced and what you're programmed to be with. And so you'll get all these toxic people and then, be upset that, oh my God, I just keep meeting toxic people. What's wrong? What's going
Mhm.
on? What's wrong with everybody? No, you're meeting the same people over and over again because you're in the same space. Not
Exactly.
only
Yes.
like frequency and your mindset, your trauma. So you have to heal all that. And then you get to a point where your empathy can get balanced out. Sure, you can feel people's shit, but when you don't want to feel it, you know how to turn that off and close that door and shield up and say, no, thank you. You know,
Mhm.
but you can't do that until you've done some healing around that.
I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
So that is interesting because you do, and if you look back on, past people that you've been with, you can even, once you're aware, you can even see it, that where you were at that time, why you were with that person.
Right, absolutely. Oh God. Looking back, you're like, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was I
Mhm.
thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only because they were, such an asshole, just because it's like, wow, like I could feel how toxic that was.
Oh,
You
yes,
know?
for sure, and I
Yeah.
read your book, and I that, and I liked it, but, it definitely, it showed, I mean, you have experienced a lot of that, but
Yeah.
we all have, I mean, I don't know about to that extent just because with, what you were involved in with the,
Right.
clubs and things, but just in relationships in general, just craziness.
Yeah. Right. And I think that you hit a point in your journey if you're on a healing journey and you are, improving and trying to like clear everything and heal everything, then I think you do get to a point where you can balance that out and you could decide, well, am I going to engage in this or not? And just like when people say, oh, I'm triggered, I'm triggered, I'm triggered. And then, I have a lot of couples, well, oh, he knows this triggers me or she knows this triggers me. Yes, but why is that a trigger? You have
Mhm,
a button and you have
mhm,
wires to that button. And if it can be pushed all the time, that's
exactly.
not other people's responsibility to not push your button. It's your responsibility to unwire it,
That's right. No, that's
you know?
100% correct, yes. It's
Yeah.
kind of nice when you do have people trigger you because at least in my opinion, I feel like then you know what the problem is, and you can
Yeah.
see it when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's as I agree with you, it's your duty to sit there and say, "Well, okay, I recognize that that triggers me. Why does it? And how do I fix that for
Yeah.
myself?"
Absolutely. Instead of, continuously being a victim to your own trigger.
Mhm. Mhm.
But, of
Or
course, in
expecting
relation,
someone else to fix you.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Always telling the partner, well, you need to do this differently or this differently or this
Mhm.
differently. And I see that a lot of times, couples, they're like, well, this person needs to do A, B, C, D, and E in order for me to be okay. Well, yeah, I mean, in a relationship, you want to compromise, you want to hear
Sure.
the other person. Now, you want to do some kind of changes, but you can tell when it hits that level of of toxicity, you hit
Mhm.
that level of like, well, wait a minute here. This is some underlying
Yeah, asking for too
fuse.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, I'm glad we got to talk about that because I have been discovering that myself.
Yeah. And then I think there's sometimes, like when you said the demon, like the face. Well, I think there can actually be really dark energies out there. I know
Mhm.
that a lot of people might not buy that or not believe in it, but I do think that you can be involved with all kinds of shit, you
Yeah.
know, anything from like a dark, empath, a narcissist,
Mhm.
spiritually fucked up, you call it demon, whatever you want to say, or also even, I mean, I kind of believe that you can be involved with like reptilians or it's kind of like an alien energy too. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that's all possible.
Sure.
Is that as common as, interchanging traumas with each other?
Mhm.
No, but I do
Yeah,
think it's possible.
I
Yeah.
agree. And I
Mhm.
think that people sometimes open themselves up to that, depending
Yeah.
on what their traumas are. I think they can open themselves up to being, having attachment, a dark
Sure.
attachment. Maybe not
Absolutely.
necessarily, we're not talking here like full on possession, but I mean,
Right.
just opening themselves up to something like that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not a big woo woo person. Like, I do all the different stuff, but I'm not like, you know, walking around with bells on my toes and shit like that. So I'm pretty practical as well. But I will say that I've been a therapist for um 12 years, I think now. And during that period of time, I encountered three human beings that were definitely something going on that was beyond just
Mm,
borderline personality disorder or
mhm.
bipolar. There was other stuff, and I can prove it, like some of the things that happened surrounding it. And I was like, wow, this is very scary.
That is
And
scary.
yeah, yeah. And they were all women.
Ugh. Well, even doing
Yeah.
Reiki, even doing the Reiki, we've talked about that before. I've had some, people too that were
Hmm.
kind of negative energy type stuff and, scary. And I
Yeah.
remember too when we were talking too, and you said, like, you don't wanna do this in your house. Don't do Reiki in your
Mhm.
house because you don't want that in, your daily
Mhm.
place where you live and things like that, because you do encounter things like that for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you have done it way more than I have, so I'm sure you've encountered it way more than I have.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the situations that I encountered it in weren't even Reiki related. They were, one of them was in a therapy session, and it was people that were actually claimed. They were looking for twin flame help. And they ended
Mhm.
up being one of the people in it, the woman ended up being pretty messed up and to
Mm,
spiritually almost like it was an attack on me. And then the other situations were women who I met outside of life, like one at like an expo who just started chatting me up, and then another one at like a martial arts studio. And they ended up like stalking me in ways that were toxic. And they were
mm.
self-proclaimed heterosexual women, but they were curious and they wanted me to be the object of their curiosity. And
Ugh.
they like stalked me until I blocked them several times on several different platforms. And still to this day, one will still try to get to me. And I know this isn't just human.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
that is weird. I agree. Ugh.
Yeah. It was wild. So, but
Take
people
care
can
of
be
yourself.
fooled by that. Yeah.
Oh,
I
I
mean, I'm
know.
good. But you can be like, if you encounter one of these people and you end up sexually involved,
Oh.
that's fucked up. And then you know something weird's going on. You have to kind of clear that
Mhm,
out. Yeah.
mhm. Well, yeah, people are weird, and people do get obsessed and have issues for sure.
Hmm.
It is scary. I
Yeah.
agree,
Yeah.
and it is difficult. It's difficult to get, break yourself away from these people.
Sure. Also like the sacred sex type of thing. Let's talk about that for a second
Okay.
because there can also be like the I don't know, falsely advertised sacred sex, right?
Mhm,
Where the guy's like, well, he's a yoga guru and we're gonna go out on a little trip into the mountains and everybody's gonna do tantric, sacred sex. Everybody's coming from a good place. Well, what the
mhm,
fuck is that?
mhm.
Is that just another way to enter into a fucking fuck buddy? I'm sorry, where you're
Hey,
like
this episode, I'm gonna have to put the explicit.
explicit. Sorry. Is that another way to have like your casual interaction without it being lewd? Like saying,
Yeah.
oh, well, in the stripping industry or the porn or
No,
swingers
they're
club. Now
just
we're
taking
talking.
advantage of it. They're just using the
Yeah.
spiritual lingo to
Yeah.
basically just take advantage sexually.
Right.
But I have all that. That is a subject for me that I have a pet peeve about, just in general, about people who use the spiritual lingo and, they do all these things and say all these things, but they're really people who are unhealed. They have as much trauma, if not more, than other people, and then they purport themselves to be these spiritual advisors and guidance
Yeah.
people and stuff, and they're not in a
Yeah.
position to be doing that at all. They're not
No.
even healed themselves. So
Right. And that's kind of like that area where people then they justify, oh well, I'm polyamorous and I'm engaging with this person and it's all consensual and my guru told me that this was okay and this is what I'm doing and yeah, I'm just loving everybody. No, you are still sidestepping vulnerability at its
mhm,
deeper level. The non-committal thing and like
mhm,
the non-monogamous thing, I think sometimes it can be just as energy draining on a different way. And a lot
mhm.
of the times there's mental health and trauma issues that go into that too, but that's
Sure.
just the way they've worked it out in order to feel better about it all without having to do much deep
Mhm.
work
Yeah,
around that.
for
So,
sure. And
yeah.
and and avoiding and just being able to not have to dive deep for sure.
Yeah. Sure. But I think that being sacred with your sexuality and your body means actually just being decent human being with it, like being clean, being careful and
Mhm.
not like feeding your body a bunch of garbage McDonald's every day. You're not like sitting there listening to a bunch of toxic shows every day. Like, what are
Mhm.
you putting in you? You know what I mean? And it's the
Sure.
same thing with the sex. So if you want to like have a fling once in a while, okay, cool. But like go out and have a beer or a drink, whatever. But like when you're constantly submerged in it, I think that's
Mhm.
when it becomes heavier and you know weighing. You could be weighing somebody down. You know what I mean?
And also too, like, I think about that with porn.
Hmm.
Men, specifically who watch porn all the time and what that does to your
Yeah.
energy and what that
Yeah.
does to your expectations as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's a whole bunch of porn addiction, a wave of porn addiction in the past like 10 years that has been gaining momentum because it's so accessible.
Mhm.
So it's just click, 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 click.
Yeah.
You're at the next thing, next frame, next person. Live chat online. You're watching people
Mhm.
live. Like it's a way to really dissociate and detach, and that addiction can be very, very
Oh,
toxic.
yeah, and I saw something one time they were talking about with young men, even with the porn, it teaches them, instant gratification.
Right.
And it's not really teaching the reality of what sexual intimacy can be. It's just kind of, you know, they pretty much, are going for the orgasm, but they're not there's more to it, obviously. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's just what they're teaching.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have had people say that it becomes so addicting that it becomes not even about the sex part of it anymore. That it's literally just the dopamine hit of clicking new things.
Ugh.
So it can like really morph into other things,
Mm.
that can be just as hard to clear.
Well, I think we've touched on a lot of topics today,
Yeah.
but I think we could go into depth on any one of these another time for sure.
Sure. Yeah. See.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on. I've loved
Yeah. Thanks
having
for
you on.
having me.
Thanks
Yeah.
for
This
coming.
was fun.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yep. Definitely.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Bye. If you're interested in downloading Teresa's book or buying it, it's available on Amazon. I will put the link in the description, but you can also search Teresa Blackburn Stripped Down. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Carrie Love. Until next time.